It is time for a new episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. We're here to break down UFC Abu Dhabi. It goes down on Saturday afternoon. Prelims start 12 p.m. Eastern time. Main card, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, main card will be on ABC and will be headlined by a key matchup in the bantamweight division. We got Sandhagen taking on Nurmagomedov. Of course, we're going to break it down for the next over an hour or so. Of course, as always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Good afternoon, Pete. How's it going, man?
What's going on, Jason? What's going on, everybody? Happy to be here for another UFC weekend, and we finally get some daytime MMA. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, man, I love me some daytime MMA. Oh, absolutely love daytime MMA. Of course, we come in here following a week where you absolutely crushed it last week. You took down the Fight HQ contest. Of course, if you did not have Bilal Muhammad, you were not going to cash in that contest there last week. Pete's lineup was Bilal Muhammad, Tom Aspinall, Paddy Pimblett, Elliott, Modestus, and Parkin. And look, man, I will say this. You were certainly right on Paddy Pimblett. I don't know why Bobby Green was shooting. Man, that is one of those situations you just look at and go, man, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, Bobby's been able to blend the arts against a ton of different fighters in there, but I would say most of them didn't really have a submission threat like Paddy Pimblett does. So Paddy totally capitalized on it. I mean, you're talking about a guy regionally who flying triangles people and has just great jiu-jitsu IQ. So and he's really hunting a finish whenever he can when it's on the mat. So, I got lucky in that situation that, Bobby Green chose to fight that type of fight. If it stays standing, I thought that Paddy was doing okay, but that's a completely different fight out of 10 times. You know what I mean? It was just, you get some good bounces in this game. I ended up taking down the counter punch as well, which was really cool. I just put my same trusted lineup in every contest that I did. I think I only had one other lineup that I used. And it worked out. And I definitely didn't have the optimal lineup. It took 22nd out of the big GPP for 200K. But it goes to show you don't necessarily have to have the optimal lineup in order to cash and have a profitable week. You just have to have the correct exposure to the correct fights and avoid those big favorites that end up, laying an egg for you.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about last week on the show of, who are going to be those high-end options that were not going to pay off. Molly McCann being one of those, only scoring 34 points in a loss. Laughlin only scoring 35 points in a loss. You also look at Arnold Allen only getting 55 points there in a win. Also, Christian Leroy Duncan getting the loss there at 8.3K. But when you look at the pump plays of the week, clearly, obviously, Bilal, what was that? But if you look at two fighters, and this is a game theory that you have talked about for a long time, is finding those fighters who are 7,300 and below that even in a loss could get you a nice score. And last week it was Daniel Pineda in a loss getting 47.36 points, and he had Elise going out there in the opening fight of the night where she was 7,300 getting 48 points. So it just kind of shows you do got to kind of think about that game theory of, can I find someone that, hey, maybe you don't have confidence that they're going to go out there and get the win, but you have a feeling like, hey, he might be able to get me 30, 40 points, and it really offers me salary relief for the rest of my lineup.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, having that punt that pays off and has a high floor absolutely helps. I will say that more often than not, women's MMA underdogs tend to have that high floor because it's a fight that tends to go 15 minutes, tends to be, competitive for the most part. Finishes are not the most expected within those divisions. Or it's a proven veteran or a volatile matchup. So like Daniel Pineda, a proven veteran, was able to go out there, and I thought, from just the optics, he got the hell beat out of him, but he's tough and he just wouldn't go away. So it's like he was able to put up a solid and a loss. But yeah, this week I got some crazy picks, man, and I can hear the dogs barking already. I think that it's going to be a ridiculous card. I always fall into the trap of spending majority of my salary just because I have OCD. So I try to leave some on the table. But if you look at my lineups, a lot of times I do spend up a lot of salary just because I want to have some of these trusted guys at the top end. But this is a week where you could literally leave $1,000 on the table all day long, and I think you could walk yourself into an optimal lineup. So can't wait to break it down. Last week was awesome. It was a super profitable week for me. Coach kills it every single week. He still had a great week. Everybody else within the Discord, and let's keep it rolling. I'm ready to just this week. It's targeting the right fights and recognizing volatility. And for me, I'm not going to get away from heavyweight MMA. I'll tell you that. Heavyweight MMA for DFS is just something that for finishing upside is something that I'm just going to prioritize here in and here. Each week in, week out, like we had Mick Parkin last week. I thought, from a takedown upside, he could give Łukasz Brzeski a lot of problems. Not to mention that Brzeski is just not all that good. And we're in a similar situation this week where Shamil Gaziev is going up against Dontel Mays. And I'm not a big Dontel Mays guy. I think there's multiple paths to victory here, especially coming back from a main event against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. So excited to do it. Let's keep it going. Let's actually take down the biggest GPP out there, win us 100K, 200K, and let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look throughout this fight card, and there is some intriguing underdogs. I know, and there's already been the conversation going on in the Discord channel about Cory Sandhagen. Totally get why people would go there. I think it's kind of interesting. He's been working with Trevor Whitman leading up to this fight. Trevor Whitman will be in his corner on Saturday there in Abu Dhabi. But you got to remember, he's coming off an injury in that one. I think that's something to note. And look, I think if Umar goes out there and gets the win, this is a guy that's potentially could get the winner of the upcoming bantamweight title matchup. There's the Vera Figueiredo fight. Really don't love from a DFS perspective, just because of the way I see that fight going. I mean, look, if you told me make one confident bet this week, it might just be fight goes to the distance in that one. That may be the thing that comforting most. I mean, you've got a Tony Ferguson who hasn't won in 5 years. You got Chiesa who hasn't won in 3 years. And Michael Chiesa, as we're here on a Wednesday afternoon, is a 8-1 betting favorite against Tony Ferguson. I mean, that's kind of crazy to see where Tony has gone there. Alvarez Brener, I think, has the recipe to be a very fun matchup. But there's some underdogs I look at, and I look early on. Look at Dennis Tulun very early on in this fight card. I think is someone kind of to pay attention to here. Padoya also an underdog to pay attention to there, and Shara Magomedov may be one of those guys I really look at as maybe one of my more confident plays.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. There's underdogs scattered galore here. I'm not in the Cory Sandhagen. I'm not going to be back in Cory Sandhagen this week from a punt in a loss. Perhaps he can score enough. I just do not like this stylistic clash for him. You got some other underdogs that could come through. I got a really big one that I'm going to talk about. But all in all, I think to be contrarian is to avoid underdogs and go all favorites, because I feel like everybody's onto it that a ton of underdogs are going to come through. I still think a ton of underdogs are going to come through. So that's the way I'm going to play it this week. But I feel like if the masses are going to leave tons of salary and do this and that, sometimes you can just do the opposite. But this is a week where I literally see, what do we got, 13 fights? I can literally see 6 underdogs coming through all day long.
Yeah, this fight card absolutely just smells of underdog city in there. Of course, we will have a DraftKings contest that'll be up here later on today. We'll put that in the show notes. Of course, I'll be in the Discord channel. Of course, our Discord channel totally free to join in there. And of course, we appreciate all the support that we get, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you may be watching us. We appreciate all the support. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. That really does help us out a ton. And of course, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We will be offering new content starting next week. Actually recorded an interview with Damon Jackson a little bit earlier on today. Of course, he's fighting next week against Chepe Mariscal. This is a matchup. Of course, initially Chepe was supposed to take on Dan Ige. Of course, Dan Ige goes up to 303. Matchup was supposed to be July 20th. Then got postponed here to August 10th. And I will say this, Damon Jackson, we did talk about him being the betting underdog, which is a kind of a familiar territory for him. Let's see. He did not realize he is a plus 200 betting underdog. So that kind of became a little bit of an interesting conversation. And towards the end of the conversation, he got talking to about of kind of he wants to, obviously go out there, get the win, walk out clean, and he feels Brian Ortega will ultimately pull out of the Diego Lopez matchup, and that's the fight he wants to get next.
Damn. Well, how you guys got to keep it locked in here on Fight HQ for all these upcoming interviews, and in addition to that, on Jason's MMA Report YouTube channel as well. So it's going to be a great addition to the channel here, and I'm looking forward to it just to get some deeper insight into their camps and to where their headspace is at. Like next week that's when we're going to debut it, so I cannot wait.
Yeah, and line up some other interviews. We'll have some Contender Series interviews up there. Also, talking some PFL Bellator. PFL is actually back on Friday night. If people want to check out PFL, that's going to be the heavyweights and the women's flyweights. I was looking at the betting odds earlier on today. I did not see a line on. I thought the Liz Carmouche line was kind of interesting against Dalia Santos. She's a 2-1 betting underdog, but I have not seen a line on the other female matchup though, which I'm sure she'll be a massive betting favorite.
Tell you what, I was there live, and Talia Santos looked awful. She looked awful. So I might have no problem just closing my eyes and betting Carmouche.
Dichkova is a 5-1 betting favorite against Jana Bishop. Not a shocker at all. They have. I love how PFL says they don't match make. They have match made this entire season for her because they have done what they could to keep her away from grapplers. And it's worked out perfectly for them in terms of the playoffs. Yeah, they did not want her to be going up against Liz Carmouche or Thalia Santos. But, if myself or Pete have any betting lines we like on the PFL, we'll certainly put that in our Discord channel. Let's get right into this one. UFC Saudi Arabia, of course, will be headlined by bantamweights Cory Sandhagen and Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar is a minus 320 betting favorite, plus 250 for Cory Sandhagen. Over on DraftKings, Sandhagen is 7,000, Nurmagomedov 9,200. And over on FanDuel, if you do like Cory Sandhagen, you get some value on Cory Sandhagen on FanDuel. He's $14, $22 for Nurmagomedov. And, Pete, I mentioned to you earlier on today about the fact of, look, I think it's kind of interesting. He's been with Trevor Whitman. Cory Sandhagen has been with Trevor Whitman leading up to this fight camp. But I also think a big note is the fact of this is his first fight since coming off an injury.
Yeah, so, this is an excellent matchup. But for Umar Nurmagomedov to catapult himself atop of the division, because if you beat Cory Sandhagen, you're on the fast track to a title. And he's kind of been dealt with not too many people wanting to accept the bouts with him, and I don't blame them. And now you have a big name who's looking to get himself back into title contention. What's a better way than to derail the hype train of Umar Nurmagomedov and Cory Sandhagen? But, I just think stylistically this is a frustrating matchup for Sandhagen, right? Like, stylistically, he wants to stay on the outside, blend his stances, throw tons of strikes, great punches, good kicks. He's diverse. He can, go between both stances. If he's a better grappler than you, he can incorporate his wrestling and his takedowns. That's definitely not on the table here against Umar Nurmagomedov. And I actually think that people are sleeping on Umar Nurmagomedov's striking as well. So, Umar is a fantastic striker, an excellent kicker. His question mark kicks are some of the best in the business. And I could really see him hurting Cory Sandhagen on the feet and then kind of just resorting to his wrestling once he realizes that Sandhagen's clipped a little bit and closes the gap. We've seen Sandhagen defensively struggle in certain matchups. Obviously, the most obvious one is against Aljamain Sterling, where Aljamain Sterling choked him out relatively easily. I do think that Umar is very talented in the wrestling department and solid in the submission department. I think that he can definitely work his way towards taking the back of Cory Sandhagen and replicating that performance from Aljamain Sterling. But I feel like it's going to be a lot of riding out Cory Sandhagen in good positions with either a later finish or just a decision victory. So I'm not necessarily prioritizing this fight, but the wrestling skills of Umar Nurmagomedov make him slate breaking worthy. Like, he can really break the slate. He's got 5 rounds to work with. If he needs more than one takedown a round, he can definitely get that. And obviously, DraftKings scoring system favors wrestlers and grapplers. I think he's going to be selective, though, in a 5-round atmosphere where he's going to make sure that he doesn't wrestle too often early so that he does not gas himself out. I think the smart game plan would be strike on the outside, use your kicks to keep Sandhagen away from you, let round 1 go as kind of just like a feeler, start to maybe clinch into round 2, and then start to employ your wrestling as the later rounds go. These are bantamweights, though. Like, bantamweights possess great activity levels, great cardio, and we already know that they're the most skilled division within the UFC. So I'm just looking forward to it from a fan standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, and a competitor standpoint. I cannot wait to watch this highly skilled main event. I'm not backing Cory Sandhagen at 7,000. Yeah, I'm just not. I just don't think, like, this is a striker's delight. I think this is a Umar Nurmagomedov chooses what type of fight this is. And it will stay standing as long as he wants it to be standing. And the second he wants to employ his wrestling, I think that's when things will change and shift. So I do think, like, obviously, any underdog in a 5-round fight, that they have a higher floor than normal and a higher floor than other underdogs. I'm just not on Sandhagen this week at 7,000. You could stack it. It is a bantamweight bout, but you need both guys to crush. And on a week where there's tons of underdogs, it's not something that I'm looking to do this week. So give me Nurmagomedov by decision at 9,200.
Look, I think if your mindset is, hey, Cory 7,000, I feel like he can get me 40, 45, 50 points even in a loss. I get that aspect, but look, I do think this is Nurmagomedov's fight to lose. I mean, he is a guy rising up this division, and if he does get the win on Saturday, it would not shock me one bit if he gets the winner of Merab and Sugar. Of course, they're going to be headlining the UFC No Chase show there in September. When you look at the betting props over there, Umar win via submission is plus 275, by decision plus 110, plus 650 win by TKO KO. By the way, not a ton of props are out there right now. It's early on in the week. If you look at the props on Cory Sandhagen, I think the one that would stick out to me the most would be that decision prop of plus 650. I think if you wanted to make a bet on Cory Sandhagen, that's probably where I would go there. His submission prop plus 1,600. TKO KO prop plus 550. It's just, to me, it's, can Cory implement a grappling aspect into this to where he can get on top position for a little bit and rack up some points there. But Pete, I am with you. I'll go Umar Nurmagomedov goes out there and gets the win. Our co-main event, of course, is a matchup that came together within the past 2 weeks here. It's Shara Magomedov taking on Michal Oleksiejczuk. Oleksiejczuk, a plus 200 betting underdog, minus 245 for Magomedov. Magomedov, 9,000 on DK, $20 on FanDuel. For Oleksiejczuk, 7,200 on DK. $10 on FanDuel. And, Pete, as I think about this matchup, look, if you want to take the underdog shot here, you're hoping that you're counting on that he is going to go out there and catch Magomedov early on in this matchup. I think the longer this fight goes on, it's more for Shara's advantage here. But, like, Shara Magomedov, to me, is a guy that we're eventually going to fade when the right matchup comes along, and I just don't think this is the right matchup for him. For Oleksiejczuk.
I'm with you. You know how, like, everybody's so quick to fade Paddy Pimblett, and obviously this is hindsight's 2020. So I'm not throwing it in anybody's face if they bet Bobby Green last week. But in general, people just want one reason or one red flag to fade somebody who's super hyped. Shara Magomedov's Achilles heel is his wrestling and grappling. Absolutely. He's a Muay Thai kickboxer in MMA. Relatively low experience when it comes to wrestling and grappling. He does work, though, to get back to his feet and still throw damaging strikes, which is the best criteria out there for scoring. So, like, if a guy's just going to lace up their wrestling shoes against him, he still works back to his feet, doing his best to have the most influence on the judges round by round. Obviously, the scary part is if he gets taken down against somebody with a submission ability. Even though Tricoli has a submission skill set, that matchup just kind of was just odd and didn't make much sense at all. It was just kind of to fill the card. I think that the underdog in a situation with true jiu-jitsu skills and good overall wrestling can beat Magomedov. I don't think that this guy's going to be undefeated forever. Michal Oleksiejczuk, just for me, is not the guy. We've seen Michal Oleksiejczuk go out there and get takedowns in the past, and at least attempt takedowns, but it's not a large enough number to make me want to back him. So, like, if I'm looking at his box scores, Michal Oleksiejczuk is predominantly a striker, but we have seen him go out there and get takedowns. Like, he, in his debut against Khalil Roundtree, he landed 2 takedowns. He attempted 3, but he had 2 takedowns. I think you need to get in that 5+ takedown territory in order to beat Magomedov. Now, like, Michal could lace up the wrestling shoes and expose him, but I just don't think it's the guy to do it. I think that Michal has shown a susceptibility of taking damage over the course and lately as well. I mean, like, we've seen him get stung and hurt. He got hurt really bad to the body from Michel Pereira and then was ultimately submitted. He dropped Kevin Holland and got way too aggressive and went to finish the fight and got armbarred. Now, explain something to me. How on earth is Michal Oleksiejczuk fighting less than 2 months after that arm injury against Kevin Holland? I mean, he either broke his arm or dislocated his arm, and it was so bad and gruesome that the referee had to step in and intervene. I don't understand how the guy has allowed himself to heal. Not only that, I don't understand how the guy has allowed himself to get back to hard training. I don't understand how he's back to sparring, or if the mobility and strength in it is at, 100%. So for me, it's just a massive red flag. And, back-to-back first-round losses and defeats can really mess with your confidence. He beat Chidi Njokuani, but was also submitted in the second round against Kyle Bahalio. I think that the confidence of Michal Oleksiejczuk could be at an all-time low, as evidenced in some of his social media, posts where he's talking about, like, if he loses this fight, he's just going to retire and be done with sports. He says, if I lose this fight, and I probably will, and then I'm going to be done with sports. That could just be gamesmanship. That could be mental warfare. But it's just an additional red flag for me. And I don't see really this skill set to expose Shara Magomedov. So I think Shara Magomedov is going to brutalize him with body kicks, leg kicks. And if I'm telling you right now, if that arm is not 100%, we might see him re-break his arm from blocking kicks with his arm. So give me Shara Magomedov by TKO in this bout. I think that he's going to look a lot better. And Michal Oleksiejczuk is going to push such a pace that he can't sustain. And we're going to see Magomedov get an early first or second round finish here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that prop, Magomedov win by TKO, KO, plus 110. Decision prop for him, plus 330. On the other side, Oleksiejczuk, if you're going to play anything, I'd probably just play the plus 510. Wins by TKO, KO if you're looking to go there. I like Magomedov to go out there and get the win. I was kind of hoping that maybe there'd be some value on some over 1.5 round props, but there's not really much value there in terms of that one. But, yeah, I do like Magomedov to go out there, but I think that there's going to come a point where there's going to become a stylistic matchup that's going to make us want to go the other way. To me, this just is not that a matchup. Next up, we got a bantamweight matchup that I wish was 5 rounds because I think my thought process on the fight might be a little different if it was a 5-round matchup. That is Marlon Chito Vera taking on Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo, a minus 150 betting favorite, plus 125 for Chito Vera. Vera, $7,800 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. Figueiredo, $8,400 on DK. $16 on FanDuel. Pete, generally both these guys are not exactly, fast starters in matchups. We've talked about that with Chito in the past. That's why this being a 3-round fight really kind of changes my viewpoint on it. But also as I think about this matchup and, and thinking about Deiveson Figueiredo and how Deiveson goes out there and gets the win, to me, it's about him utilizing grappling, using, getting Chito down on his back. And I just, for some reason, the way I also view this fight is I think Deiveson Figueiredo gets up to nothing. Cheeto comes back in the third round, looks great, runs out of time. Deiveson Figueiredo wins by decision.
Yeah, I could definitely see it, right? Like, we already know that Marlon Vera is a traditional slow starter, gives away first rounds more than anybody within the business, works his way into fights. If it's a 5-round bout, you can already bank that he's going to win rounds 4 and 5, and then he needs to turn it on in round 3. The issue here is it's 3 rounds, right? And I'm kind of scratching my head as to why it is 3 rounds. But I will say that, like, stylistically, it's kind of interesting to see the evolution of Deiveson Figueiredo relying more on his grappling and wrestling his past 2 fights. I mean, he resorted to takedowns against Rob Font because of the dangerous jab and boxing of Rob Font. Landed 4 of 7 takedowns, only 4 minutes of control time. And against Cody Garbrandt, who's semi-hesitant from a big shot coming from Deiveson Figueiredo, he was able to change the levels and take him down and control him for 3.5 minutes before he ultimately choked him out with a rear naked choke. The issue here against Marlon Vera is, like, I don't think that he can bully Marlon Vera. I think Marlon Vera is the stronger guy here. I really do. I think that, you know, coming off a 5-round bout with Sean O'Malley, getting beat from pillar to post, 230 significant strikes for O'Malley and 89 for Marlon Vera, I think you take something from that. Even experience, even just composure, even something. In that fight, like, he could not catch up to O'Malley, and the gap between O'Malley and him was way too wide. But you will see in round 5, you know, he hurt O'Malley to the body as the bell sounds. You know what I mean? Like, he's still live from bell to bell. I think a lot of people are going to fade Marlon Vera because it's a 3-round fight. From a betting standpoint, I am not going to. I'm going to back Marlon Vera here as an underdog. And I understand everybody's concern about giving away round 1. I just don't think that Deiveson Figueiredo can bully Marlon Vera like he has some other people within this division. I think he's a true flyweight, but just the cut became too much. He doesn't seem to be a big bantamweight, whereas I think that Marlon Vera is a pretty big guy. You know, bouncing between featherweight and mostly bantamweight throughout his career. Like, Vera's a long, rangy guy who also uses his kicks. Deiveson Figueiredo predominantly is a boxer with disgusting jiu-jitsu. So, like, I'm going to be backing Marlon Vera here as an underdog. For DraftKings, do I like it? For DFS, not necessarily. If you look, you know, at their history, Deiveson Figueiredo is not a good DFS player for the most part. And same thing with Marlon Vera. Composure, sniping type striking from Marlon Vera, using his front kicks, his low kicks, his kicks in general to keep Deiveson Figueiredo at bay, defend the takedowns when Deiveson throws big shots to clinch. Give me Marlon Vera here to win a decision. And I think just for DFS, like, we've seen Marlon Vera in some high volume fights in the past. In a 3-round decision, he landed 141 significant strikes against Pedro Munoz. That still only scored him 86.4. And I think that Pedro Munoz is a guy to be hit a lot more than Deiveson Figueiredo. So give me Marlon Vera to win a decision here and score, like, within the 70s, which isn't necessarily needed on a week like this when we have a ton of high-end underdogs with finishing potential. So it's a fight that I'll ultimately be lighter on than the public, but give me Vera here to spoil Figueiredo's hopes of climbing the rankings relatively quickly.
And that is a great point that you bring up about the size difference between these two guys. You know, Cheeto at one time was a 45er, coming down to now 35. Of course, we know Deiveson Figueiredo, the former UFC flyweight champion, moving up to 135 pounds. So that's going to be something, could be a very good live betting situation too. You might get a little bit of a better number than plus 125. I mean, look, from a betting perspective, Pete, sign me up for Cheeto Vera plus 300 win by decision. Like, that to me is the prop bet that sits there and says, you know what? I mean, yeah, if you could get a good number on a over 2.5 rounds, or even a fight goes a distance, which is not a good number. I think the fight goes a distance is plus 300 as we sit here on a Wednesday afternoon. But, like, you or minus 300, excuse me. Cheeto Vera plus 300 win by decision. This to me is God, and I just think from a DFS perspective, this is one of those matchups that you go, you know, if you're using something like a Fantasy Cruncher or some type of optimizer, this is where I would be limiting how much you get to this matchup. Like, I might say no more than 15%.
Yeah, I'm with you. And like, if underdogs don't come through, that's where Marlon Vera, even in a low scoring decision win, could walk himself into an optimal lineup. I just think there's so many other options this week that have 80 plus point upside all day long, and they're cheaper. So give me Marlon Vera to do it from a betting standpoint. And I love how when I'm breaking down the fights, or you're even breaking down the fights, you're incorporating it with the betting lines. Like it's great because we got half of our listeners are from the sports betting industry, and half of them are from the daily fantasy industry. And I'm a mix of both, and I know you are as well. Yeah. So I enjoy both.
Let's move over to our next matchup. We got Tony Ferguson taking on Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa, a 8-1 betting favorite in this one, plus 475 for Tony Ferguson. Chiesa, 9,500 on DK, $23 on FanDuel. Ferguson, 6,700 on DK, $8 on FanDuel. It's kind of amazing the UFC continues to give Tony Ferguson a fight. We've seen what has happened since 2000 with him. And, you know, there was a comment in the YouTube comments from Manis where he's talking about Tony by sub, doesn't Chiesa always get strangled? As I think about how does Michael Chiesa drop the ball here, why is the visualization for me? He goes in for a takedown and he gets caught in a guillotine.
All right, let me tell you, I'm way too excited for this fight. I'm like, while Jason's talking, if Jason goes back and plays it back, he'll see I'm like trying to compose myself over here. I'm way too excited for this. And I'm going to die on this hill, okay? And I'm back in Tony Ferguson, guys. I'm telling you right now, I put a tweet out that I have a bold prediction, and it's super specific and super bold. Jason's talking about a guillotine. Totally can see it, right? Chiesa in general should not be a minus 700, minus 800 favorite here. I understand that Tony Ferguson is going to have the record for the most consecutive losses in the UFC. Stylistically, he has the wrestling to manhandle Tony Ferguson. So from a slate-breaking perspective, if what I'm saying doesn't happen and does not come to fruition, Chiesa could land 10-plus takedowns here and break the slate. Let me just throw that out there. But after he takes Tony down a ton of times, I do not think he's going to finish Tony Ferguson with a submission like some people do. You have Charles Oliveira, who ragdolled Tony Ferguson. You have Beneil Dariush, who ragdolled Tony Ferguson. And they were not able to submit Tony Ferguson. And the reasons why I think that is because when Tony Ferguson is preparing for a fight, stylistically, he caters to their style. Instead of doing everything under the sun, I'm sure he does, but he really hammers home specifics. With Bobby Green, I'm sure he put way too much focus on the boxing. Way too much focus on the boxing, so that when Bobby Green was able to take him down or get on top of him and submit him, it was like the most least expected thing in the world. Against Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush, he knew what he was going up against. So, yes, he still got taken down. But at least he did not get finished against one of the most prolific finishers in Charles Oliveira. That holds some merit in my book. Michael Chiesa is a guy that has the record for getting Darce choked more than anybody. Jason saying guillotine, the paper and on paper, Darce choke is one of Tony Ferguson's best submissions out there. He gets it so quickly and so fast. We've seen it happen time and time again. Okay, I think he's going to be wise to the defense of it. So I have a specific submission that Tony Ferguson is going to hit Michael Chiesa with. And here it is, Jason. Tony Ferguson's going to get ragdolled by Michael Chiesa until Chiesa either starts to fatigue from it or leave his neck out there. While Tony Ferguson is on his back, he is going to attempt and land the first buggy choke in the UFC. Because when Michael Chiesa is taking him down, he's going to be in half guard a little bit. He's going to pass the side control. And we've already seen Tony Ferguson work at attempting buggy chokes in the past. I think Tony Ferguson is either going to buggy choke Michael Chiesa and finally right the ship and get back on winning ways after having 7 consecutive defeats in the UFC. Or the most likely situation is that Tony Ferguson lands his legendary Darce choke against Michael Chiesa, who has a knack for leaving his neck out there. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But 6,700, Tony Ferguson, I understand it's not 2015. I'm still backing him here. And for DFS, he is the absolute most volatile punt out there. But I'm willing to take a shot. I already put $100 on Tony Ferguson just to win the fight. I mean, at plus 450, whatever, it's ridiculous. It shouldn't be this wide, considering Michael Chiesa is extremely inconsistent in the UFC to begin with. He does not dig deep when the going gets tough, and he taps so quickly too. I just think an attempt, something gets relatively close, Tony Ferguson finally gets back in the win column. So give me Tony Ferguson to pull it off at 6,700, Jason.
How do you have any confidence in that?
I don't know. I'm trusting myself, man. I'm telling you, I've been watching so much fight film. Ferguson is attempting buggy chokes against better competition. I just think submission defense for Michael Chiesa is his Achilles heel.
Yeah, I agree.
And Ferguson, from his Instagram posts, he has not been posting about it, but his tag posts on Instagram, if you go and you really dive deep on the socials, it looks like he's pretty invested in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu for this camp. So I'm just saying, we could finally see Tony Ferguson right the ship. And maybe I'll throw a Michael Chiesa lineup together just for the opposite side. But I'm telling you, imagine, I really hope Tony Ferguson does this, because I don't want him to be gone already. I just don't.
I will tell you, the interesting prop bet that I have seen out there is to me is the Michael Chiesa wins via decision. Even the Ferguson wins by decision is crazy at plus 1,000. I mean, look, if you want to bet Tony Ferguson, just take the money line. Just take the money line. You know, just take the plus. You know, it might get even more than plus 475 at this point. To me, I think from a DFS perspective, if you're going to roster Chiesa, that to me has got to be an ownership play. If ownership is coming in low on Michael Chiesa, then I can see the path, but it's 9,500. Just don't love it. Don't love it over on FanDuel at $23. Look, I think that more times than not, Michael Chiesa gets the win on Saturday. More times than not. But I just, at this point, I can't trust Tony Ferguson. That's just where I'm at. I can't trust him.
I don't blame you at all. You know, both guys have fought in the lightweight division, and both have had welterweight success as well. You know, Ferguson's best success outside of winning the Ultimate Fighter was within the lightweight division, where he went on one hell of a streak. The thing is from judging criteria, if Chiesa is just taking him down and is in his guard, we know Ferguson is going to be butchering him with elbows. We know that Ferguson loves to cater towards the damage criteria. On the feet, he likes to cut you up. He's the better striker. His strength of schedule, despite losing, has been against some of the best in the game right now. Paddy Pimblett, Bobby Green, Nate Diaz, Michael Chandler, Dariush, Oliveira, Justin Gaethje. And I think he's had moments. So if this is on the feet, I think it's a lot closer. And maybe a submission attempt gets close and it scares the hell out of Michael Chiesa, and he's just tentative on the feet. So whether it goes the distance, whether he knocks out Chiesa, I just think there's so many ways, so many sneaky ways for Ferguson to actually do this, that it's enough for me to back him here. No confidence, because on paper, this is exactly why the odds are what they are. But on fight film, Chiesa's fight film's just as bad in certain moments. So I'm willing to take the shot on the big underdog of Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, to me, it's a concern that he makes a tactical mistake and gets submitted. That's my concern there with Michael Chiesa. Yeah. Samuel, appreciate your Super Chats. We'll definitely get to your questions there at the end of the show. Of course, that's a great way to get your question here on the show, as we do appreciate those Super Chats that do come in. Next up, we got a female match. We got Mackenzie Dern taking on Loopy Godinez. Godinez is a plus 105 betting underdog, minus 125 for Mackenzie Dern. This is your A200, 8,000 fight for the week. So Dern is the A200 fighter, 8,000 for Loopy over on FanDuel. $16 for Dern, $15 for Loopy Godinez. Pete, what's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, tough fight, man. Really tough fight, right? Like, I think, like, stylistically, we've seen Loopy Godinez box people up, offensively wrestle, but, like, from a jiu-jitsu and a control standpoint, give up positions in certain moments. Obviously, like, her most recent fight against Vera was able to get good positions, land 2 takedowns, attempt 3 submissions, ultimately win the fight because of the control time, 6.5 minutes. And Loopy's a very good wrestler. Mackenzie Dern is not. Mackenzie Dern is not a good wrestler, but she's a very good back taker. So this is where it's making me scratch my head a little bit, because on the feet, Mackenzie Dern throws heat. Loopy Godinez is more technical. If a scramble ensues, I can really see Dern putting Loopy in a compromising position. But, like, from basics to basics, Loopy Godinez probably avoids some major bad spots with her good hips. It's just the back takes are a different element in this game against a jiu-jitsu practitioner of Mackenzie Dern's level. So, oddly enough, I think I'm going to back Mackenzie Dern here. I just think, like, one back take can win. Obviously, a back take can end the fight, but it can also really influence the judges from a control standpoint. We've seen Dern in more highly contested fights than Loopy Godinez to this point. We've seen Loopy Godinez lose and get put in some bad spots. Like, Angela Hill took her down. Calvillo took her down. Janaroba, obviously. Jessica Panay. That Panay fight in her debut was a very long time ago in 2021. But the jiu-jitsu IQ was a little suspect for Loopy. I'm sure she's improved, but you cannot make any jiu-jitsu errors against Mackenzie Dern. So I do think that Mackenzie Dern on the feet tends to strike a lot more than she needs to. I've been saying it for years. She needs to, go and get the highest level wrestling coaches around so that she can take people down and sub them. With all the 5-round experience, all the top-end people she's competed against, I think she's learned something from it. So give me Mackenzie Dern to win a decision here. Close on the feet, gets a good position, ends up making Loopy work, but having, basically running out of time. So give me Mackenzie Dern via decision here.
And one thing to note, Loopy Godinez's sister will not be in her corner for this matchup. Good reasons. She's competing in the Olympics for Team Canada in wrestling. So this is the first time in a long time that she's not had her sister in the corner, something to kind of put there. You do kind of wonder if Dern can get this one to the mat, if she can get on the back of Godinez, how much that could be advantage there. But, like, from a DFS perspective, not really a fight I love. There's not many props out there on the Godinez side of the situation. Do have some props over on the Dern, plus 1,700 win by TKO KO, plus 300 win by submission, or plus 225 to win be a decision. I'd be interested to see what that Godinez decision prop is. When that comes out later on this week, that could be something to look at there, because I think overall I would expect this thing probably does go 15 minutes. Next up, we got a matchup that could be a barn burner, and that's Joel Alvarez taking on Elves Brener. Brener at plus 165, betting underdog minus 195 for Joel Alvarez. He is 8,300 DK, $17 on FanDuel. While the other side, we got Brener at $7,900, $13 on FanDuel. And one of the more, I think, the thought process I have on this matchup is, what is it going to look like on weigh-in day with Joel Alvarez? Because, Pete, we have seen him have issues on the scale.
Yeah, he's a big guy for the division, absolutely. And he's one of the best opportunistic submission fighters within the lightweight division. He's huge. He's a big guy. Elves Brener is not the most skilled guy, but he is such a tough out. He really is. Like, he's getting rocked with shots and hurt countless times within his UFC career, talking regionally as well, too. And the guy has just such a big heart. I hate saying how some people have heart and they don't have heart, but this guy really proves you right by saying he's a dog. Like, he's going to, as long as he's conscious, he is going to do everything in his being to try to win. And when the going gets tough, some people break under the pressure. He doesn't. He somehow composes himself in between rounds, comes out a different type of fighter. he's a solid wrestler. He's a solid grappler. He's a solid striker. More so than anything, he's just tough. And he's been hurt so much and hasn't been finished in the UFC, right? Like, Mikdebek Orolbai hurt him. Guram Kutataladze hurt him countless times. I don't know how they didn't score 2 of those things as knockdowns, 2 of those sequences as knockdowns, because Brener was hurt, dropped, shot takedowns, and he's a guy that hunts finishes too. And whether he hunts finishes or he's just trying to win back a round or two, when he lands, he hurts people. He really does. He knocked out Kenan Khrushchevsky. He came back and he beat Guram Kutataladze. I think this fight is going to garner a ton of ownership. Like a ton of ownership. You have a prolific finisher in Joel Alvarez, and now you have a guy in Elves Brener, priced at $8,300 for Alvarez and $7,900 for Brener. It's kind of like the Duncan and Gregory Rodriguez fight where we knew it was going to be DFS friendly. It's just I couldn't pull the trigger on who the hell was actually going to win that. You like Gregory Rodriguez, and I liked Duncan a little bit more, just because I thought Duncan was going to rise to the occasion. I kind of view this fight as a similar situation where like everybody's going to be on this fight, and maybe for good reason. But in the chance that it underperforms, and you're left with a middling 80 score from one of these guys, and you pivoted to some other options, you could be in a great spot. I'm willing to bet that both of these guys have above 25% ownership. That's a lot. That's a lot of the field. So if you can pivot to a unique lineup by avoiding this fight, I would recommend it. After saying all that, though, the likelihood is this fight ends within 15 minutes. I'm just having a really difficult time. Joel Alvarez, great submission threat. Brenner's really tough but gets hurt often. I worry about Joel Alvarez having the better striking and better damaging techniques. Brener, getting hurt a lot, taking him down, laying on top of him, and then we come out to like, all right, well, how did you score that round? Damage versus control. I'm going to pick Joel Alvarez here, though. I think that if he hurts him, he can possibly finish Elvis Brener. But I just think one way or another, whether it's on the scorecards, that Alvarez's finishing attempts do enough in the judges' eyes. But Brenner's probably one of the best underdogs to target because this matchup in general should be DFS friendly. But whenever I have a really hard time with certain fights, I just move on because it's just like I want to feel good about all 6 options. Like I know this would be a big score, but from a GPP 150 max, tons of exposure from a single entry type of approach like I've been doing, I might just move on from it because I can't make up my damn mind.
One thing is I think that when we get there on fight night, we're going to see a noticeable size difference between these two guys where Joel Alvarez should have a sizable size advantage in this one, taller fighter. But, let's see what he does look like on the scale because we've seen those issues come with there. By the way, Joel Alvarez wins via submission plus 220. Elvis Brener wins by TKO KO plus 600. Of course, that is going to be the first fight on the main card. Moving over to the prelims, we got Menifield taking on Azamat. Azamat, a minus 220 betting favorite. Menifield plus 180. He is 7,500 on DK, $12 on FanDuel, where Azamat on the other side, $8,700 on DK, $19 on FanDuel. And, Pete, there's certain fighters where you never know what to make of them. And it seems like, whenever I really back Alonzo Menifield are the times that he just doesn't come in for us. Like, he's just one of those fighters I've always struggled with in terms of my DFS lineups.
Yeah, I mean, holy moly, right? Like, this division in general has just extremely high finishing upside. Heavyweight and light heavyweight, like, I really love attracting a lot of my ownership and my exposure there. I think that Alonzo Menifield can be labeled as a giant red flag, and I've been saying it for a while now. I don't know how he's picked up some of these victories inside the UFC. I got nothing against him. I'm just very surprised because I think his explosive combinations are excellent and his power is clearly evident. but his cardio falls off a cliff. I don't trust his coaching staff. I mean, like, if he's still working with Pat Barry, I still think that's one of the most boneheaded decisions out there. He went out there last fight against Carlos Ulberg and just tried to swing a wild combination to close the gap, possibly land it, and got caught and finished so quickly against Carlos Ulberg. He scored 0.4 points. That was like negative fight IQ. And if he goes out there with a 50-50 approach of swinging and banging against Azamat Murzakanov, I think he's going to get knocked out again. And that's kind of what I'm expecting to happen here, because Azamat Murzakanov has deceptive optics. Like, he does not look like to be the most physically imposing guy. He's not muscle bound like Alonzo Menifield. He looks like an old Sambo guy. And I'll tell you what, the professional Azamat Murzakanov, he's undefeated for a reason. He hits like a truck. I mean, he's knocked down all 4 opponents inside the UFC. Actually, the one on Contender Series, Mateus Shuffle, knocked him out in 3 minutes. Shuffle went on to the PFL. And his 3 fighters inside the UFC, Tafon Nchukwi, Devin Clark, and Dustin Jacoby, he's knocked them all down. And even though he was getting out-volumed against Tafon Nchukwi, who's an underrated Muay Thai practitioner, he still found the finish. So, in possibly his worst performance, he went out there and scored 72.4 against the glory kickboxing, skilled type of striker in Dustin Jacoby, where he has to mind his P's and Q's. He scored 72.9. So that's not the best. I just don't think that Alonzo Menifield, presents the same striking problem. There's going to be a moment where Alonzo doesn't bring his hands back to his face, throws a wide combination, lunges in, and I think he's going to run into a shot. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to back Azamat Murzakanov here at 8,700 to knock out Alonzo Menifield. I know Menifield's sneakily been in some long fights, went the distance against Herman, against Knight, Crute, and Jacoby. And we've seen Murzakanov go the distance against Dustin Jacoby also. I think a finish happens here. And if Alonzo Menifield does it, my goodness, good credit to him, because I'm just not the biggest Alonzo Menifield guy. I think Azamat Murzakanov knocks him out, and he's a lefty. So I think that left hand's going to find a home. 8,700, I love the price tag too.
Yeah, it's like I said, for whatever reason, I can never get a Menifield fight, and he's a guy that for the most part I always kind of fade against, and I'm going to fade him again here. I like Azamat to go out there and get the win. Next up, we got Yahya taking on Fernandes. Fernandes, a 4-1 betting favorite in here. Mohammad Yahya is plus 300. Yahya 6,900 DK, $9 on FanDuel. On the other side with Fernandes, he's 9,300 DK and $21 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, so I mean, wide line, right, between Kaue Fernandes and Mohammad Yahya. If you go and you look back at some fight film, though, you'll recognize, like, Yahya got out-muscled and out-wrestled against Trevor Peek. He landed a takedown in his own right, but he's just a guy I'm not big on. And am I big on, Kaue Fernandes? Not necessarily, but I do look at him and say, oh, he's got some striking skills to him. I think that he's a pretty damn good kicker. And his striking, there's a gap. His striking skills, there's a gap between him and Mohammad Yahya. I also think that, him debuting against Mark Chiesa is a much stiffer test than debuting against Trevor Peek. Trevor Peek is very aggressive and is a brawler inside the UFC. Kaue Fernandes did decently well against Mark Chiesa, who, really relies on his wrestling now after still being a very good striker in his own right. I think that Kaue Fernandes ends up, knocking out Mohammad Yahya. I do. I think he ends up knocking him out. I think he kicks him. I think he kicks him somewhere, whether it's to the body or to the head. And I like Kaue Fernandes, but I think the score is going to be limited because he's a sniper. He's not a volume striker. 9,300, I think that he'll take his time, get his reads, and then we're going to see a second-round knockout for Kaue Fernandes at 9,300.
Yeah, I like Fernandes in the spot as well. By the way, no props are out there. It's obviously still early on in the week. We'll probably get some props here, I would imagine, next 24 hours. So I'm definitely going to be looking at those Fernandes inside the distance props. In terms of that one, and early on the show, Pete, you talked about heavyweight MMA is something you want to target in terms of DFS, and we got Shamil and Dontel here. Dontel plus 190 betting underdog, minus 235 for Shamil. Shamil 9,100 DK, $19 on FanDuel. Mays 7,100 DK, $11 on FanDuel, and Dontel Mays is another one of this. I mean, look, he's in the lower third of this division, and this just to me feels like this is really, if you're going to play this fight, you play the favor, you pass.
Yeah, well, we say that, and you're on the same, you have the same mindset as me in backing Shamil Gaziev. The division in general is a volatile division, right? So like Dontel Mays has UFC wins. He does. Like he has a win over Roque Martinez, Josh Parisian, Andre Arlovsky, and Kyle Machado. Pretty low level wins though, in my opinion. And on the flip side, you see Shamil Gaziev, he has a win over Martin Buday. I think Martin Buday is better than all those guys I just listed that Dontel Mays has beaten. So, it's a skill thing, and I'm banking on my fight film that Dontel Mays I'm not a big guy. I'm not a backer. I've never been a backer of Dontel Mays. I picked against them consistently inside the UFC. I just don't see, he tries to wrestle, not the best wrestler. Tries to strike, I'll give him that he has some deceptive power in his hands, but he drops his hands a lot. I don't like his style for heavyweight MMA. I think he's going to get clipped with a shot, with his attempt of keeping his hands low and rolling with shots. He's going to end up getting dropped with a punch, and whether he gets ground and pounded or he gets submitted. I just really like Shamil Gaziev. This seems like a setup fight to me. It really does. Like, people could be low on Gaziev here. Outside the UFC, he was an absolute monster. Inside the UFC, we've seen him beat a good guy in Martin Buday. And what? He loses a main event in his second UFC fight. He's in a main event against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, trying to catapult him to the top, see if he's ready for it. Looks great round one. Is able to get the takedown, and a crafty veteran in Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's been really working on his wrestling for years and years and years, defends some takedowns, makes them work, and starts to light up Shamil Gaziev. Let me just say, the fact that a human being took 127 significant strikes from Jairzinho Rozenstruik should be impressive enough. Like Gaziev's got a chin on him. I understand that he ended up getting finished in the fourth round, but largely that was due to exhaustion, right? Like, I'm just impressed that Gaziev is that damn tough, because Jairzinho Rozenstruik's hit people with one shot and knocked them out. Give me Gaziev here. I think it's a setup fight. He's a big guy for the division, holds the wrestling advantage, has better subs, has better hands, and I think this is a division for DFS that I want to target. I mean, look what Mick Parkin did last week for us, against Lukasz Brzeski. I think there's better underdogs to target than Dontel Mays. So give me 9,100 Shamil Gaziev to get a big, big victory here.
Yeah, I'm with you, and especially the point of when we're looking at underdogs on this card, I'd much rather go other places on this card as opposed to going to the 7,100 Dontel Mays. Next up, we got a matchup that came together over the past couple of days. Jordan stepping up here, Cage Warriors fighter, stepping up to take on Guram. Guram, a minus 215 betting favorite, plus 180 for Jordan. Jordan, 7,400 DK, $12 on FanDuel. Guram, 8,800 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. Jordan's one of those guys that he fought 3 weeks ago, so, and this is kind of in that European scene. He's known as a guy that he's willing to take on and step up at any moment. It was kind of a guy you heard was already kind of on that UFC radar to get in here, and now he gets a short notice opportunity here in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, so I will say that this guy, Jordan Vucenic, is very good. The epidemic Vucenic, that's kind of good. 13-2 record overall, very, very talented. He's skilled in the boxing and Muay Thai department, a Muay Thai champ. Oddly enough, he's been able to go out there and, impose his will in the grappling area, as long as he's better than his opponents, right? And that seems pretty obvious. But if he holds a slight advantage in that department, he can capitalize with some submissions. He's, coming off of 4 submissions in a row, guillotine, Kimura, and 2 rear naked chokes. But I don't think that's his best skill set. And I almost think it could be a trap here because, coming in, fighting Guram Kutateladze on short notice is not an easy fight. I'm bigger on Guram Kutateladze than a lot of people. I'm not really worrying all that much that he's lost to Demiraz Magulov and Elves Brener. Look at the fights. He's hurting both of those guys. It was a split against Ismagulov. Against Brener, he was on his way to winning a decision, and then he got hit with a shot and he got finished. Jordan Vucenic, skilled enough to pull off the upset, absolutely. Do I think he's a true 55er? Not really. I think that he's a 45er. So at 155 pounds, I think that Guram Kutateladze, just having the UFC experience is going to be evident in this situation. It's still a jump. It's the lights are still bright. No matter how skilled you are outside the cage at 13-2, when you're stepping in on super short notice against a guy in Guram Kutateladze who is in equal opposition in the striking, if not better than you. And I actually think a sneaky path to victory here is that Guram Kutateladze can land takedowns. I know that Vucenic's going to be looking for takedowns to possibly just get a good position and get a quick submission on a short notice like he has done in his past 4 fights. But I think that it's going to make Guram work. Guram will, get his underhooks and attempt takedowns in his own right, which is something that people don't realize. If you watch the fight film, you'll see, oh, wow, Guram Kutateladze landed 1 of 3 takedowns against Elves Brener, who's definitely a better wrestler than Vucenic. And then he landed 1 of 7 takedowns against Demiraz Magulov. So I just think that's a sneaky path. Priced at $8,800 against the guy coming in on short notice. Give me Guram Kutateladze to be a contrarian kind of upper tier player this week. We had Modestas Bukauskas at 8,500. I said that he was contrarian. He ended up pulling it off for me, which was great. But he was so contrarian that it allowed me to have a unique lineup. And I'm going to do the same thing this week with Guram Kutateladze. Vucenic is damn good. I just think it's too tough of a UFC debut.
Yeah, also kind of wondering if, going down in weight, his next UFC matchup is really the ideal weight class for him to be at in terms of there. And, I mean, great point you bring up. You're trying to find those, I would say, from that salary range of 85 to 8,900. Who's going to be that fighter that has that, high upside and also have that low ownership. Next up, we got a female matchup, Dudakova and Hughes. Hughes plus 140, betting underdog minus 170 for Dudakova. Dudakova, 8,500 DK, $17 on FanDuel. Hughes, 7,700 DK, $13 on FanDuel. And I know you're not going to feel good about this, but could Sam Hughes actually be one of the better underdogs this week?
I think so. And the reason I think so is obviously because it's women's MMA. Not only that, we've seen Sam Hughes tested inside the UFC. You still don't really have a good read on Victoria Dudakova. Dudakova on Contender Series landed 4 takedowns against Maria Silva, ended up winning, a decision, had 10 minutes of control time. So that's good. That's a style that can beat Sam Hughes against Estela Nunes. Very quick fight. Estela Nunes plants her hand, dislocates her elbow. 34-second victory, which is why Dudakova has such a great box score from that performance at 121.4 points. Watch the fight, you realize it's a fluke. The fight against Jinyu Frey, it was predominantly a striking matchup, and she knocks down Jinyu Frey. But oddly enough, the lighter Jinyu Frey ends up taking her down and getting 4 minutes of control time. Jinyu Frey had 1 of 3 takedowns, 4.5 minutes of control time. Victoria Dudakova tried to turn the tide and attempt takedowns as well, because that's usually her wheelhouse. 0 of 3 in the takedown department. Was unable to do so, chose to strike, and ended up winning a decision that way. I mean, I will circle this fight as a very sneaky fight to target, because Dudakova does have wrestling, and I'm not going to say good wrestling. She has wrestling to possibly break the slate, because with 4 takedowns on the Ultimate Fighter, on the Contender Series, with 10 minutes of control time, she attempted 8. So that's a large number. That can definitely score well. The issue here is that I think Sam Hughes has fought better opposition to prepare her for a fight like this. Debuting against Tisha Pennington now is a tough fight. Loma Lukbumi, tough fight. Luana Pinheiro, Elise Reed, Piera Rodriguez, Jacqueline Amarine, and Yasmin Haregi. Like, my goodness, this girl's been fighting and challenging herself in every bout. I think we don't have a good read on Victoria Dudikova. And because we don't have a good read on her, I think that her wrestling is something that she somewhat abandoned in her previous fight, was taken down against a lighter, not as skilled wrestler in Jinyu Frey, and I'm not in love with her striking. And I know that Sam Hughes is damn tough and that she will push a pace and she will work back to her feet and she could get takedowns in her own right. Like, what happens if Dudikova gets put on her back for a longer prolonged period of time? So it's like, give me Sam Hughes here at 7,700. Call me crazy, but Sam Page Hughes, 8-6 overall, not the best on paper record. I think that Dudikova might be a little overrated, though. Overrated in general. Looked solid on Dana White's Contender Series, but I think that she's in for a rude awakening against a fighter that's not going to go away. It's Sam Hughes. So target the fight in general. Give me Sam Hughes for the pick.
Yeah, I was as I was looking through the salaries over the past day or so, that was one thing I kept looking at. Sam Hughes was the fighter I kept looking for, and to me it comes to level of competition Dudikova's gone against, level of competition Sam Hughes has gone against. Next up, we got Jai Herbert taking on Rolando Bedoya. Bedoya, a plus 120 betting underdog, minus 140 for Herbert. Herbert, A600 DK, $16 on FanDuel. Bedoya, 7,600 DK, $15 on FanDuel. And Pete, this is another underdog I'm looking to take some shots on.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I don't know which underdog's going to score well. So I might have more lineups than I normally do. I've been taking a single entry approach and kind of putting that lineup in a ton of contests. I might have a more scattered approach this week just because of the likelihood that multiple underdogs come through. I'm going to be back in Rolando Bedoya in this lightweight matchup, mainly because Rolando Bedoya is a former welterweight, big guy, stands at 5'11". Oddly enough, Jai Herbert's taller than him at 6'1", but like Bedoya is accustomed to fighting welterweights. Jai Herbert is a guy that, has bounced between featherweight and lightweight, and I think is a very good striker as long as you do not back him up and land too many strikes against him, because that chin is somewhat susceptible to big shots. Rolando Bedoya's volume is something that needs to be mentioned here, because debuting against Chaos Williams, that was a split decision. A lot of people thought that he might have pulled that off. I mean, he landed 149 significant strikes. That's just a pace in general that I don't think that Jai Herbert can sustain or can match. So, Bedoya's already done it. Now, I will tell you, dropping a weight class, he may be better. He may be stronger. But if he goes out there and throws a ton of volume, I bet you his cardio might fall off a cliff a little bit. So be careful here, because Bedoya is cutting from welterweight to 55. If he goes out there thinking he can have the same activity level, I think he's sadly mistaken. He could, but it may just take some time to adjust to the weight class. Even against Song Kanan, he got dropped, he got back up, landed 112 significant strikes. He's due for a win, man. He throws too much volume to not win a fight. I think that he's going to land the better shots against Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert could resort to clinching with him a little bit, maybe grappling. I highly doubt that, though. But just having a patient striking approach, only throwing 2.5 significant strikes per minute. Meanwhile, Bedoya's numbers are inflated because of the two crazy performances, landing 8.5 significant strikes per minute. So I think the KO prop for Rolando Bedoya is something I'll put some small money on. But if you go back and you look at their records, between the two of these guys, I mean, they bend the distance quite a lot. I mean, we've seen Rolando Bedoya and Jai Herbert go to 13 decisions between the two of them. So I think Rolando Bedoya will win a decision here. But I think as far as an underdog to come through, if it's a high volume decision, say he got that nod against Chaos Williams, he would have scored 90. Priced at 7,600, 90 is perfect. That's amazing. But say he got the nod in the decision to Song Kanan, he only scores 75.8. That's probably not necessary. But I do think Bedoya comes through from a betting angle.
And look, I just don't, when I think of Jai Herbert, I just don't think volume. That's what scares me when we're talking about from a DFS perspective. But the pick is going to be Bedoya for me. Then our opening fight of the night, you got Dumas taking on Tulun. Tulun, a plus 185 betting underdog, minus 225 for Cedric. He's 8,900 DK, $18 on FanDuel, where on the other side, Dennis Tulun, 7,300 DK, $12 on FanDuel. And I wouldn't feel good about this. This is also another underdog spot I may not mind getting to.
Yeah, I don't mind getting to it. Cedric Dumas is not the most skilled guy, most intelligent guy. Neither is Dennis Tulun. I just think the odds are wide. The odds are a little wide, and I combined it with some other underdogs for some small wagers in my parlays. But let's break down the skill. Cedric Dumas, a little longer of the two, kicks a lot more than Dennis Tulun, who predominantly throws big swinging punches. Cedric Dumas probably has the better wrestling of the two, even though I would rate his wrestling as poor. I think that he has the better opportunistic jiu-jitsu game of the two, clearly. Dennis Tulun is just a very tough guy who's fought some tough opposition outside the UFC. And in the UFC, he's kind of fought some really tough guys as well. I mean, think about it. Hisriev lost, Pickett win, Park lost, Rodriguez lost, Duncan lost. Like, Tulun doesn't take damage well, and he doesn't deal with submission attempts well either. So I think that Cedric Dumas has plenty of paths to victory to finishing him here. The issue is, how the hell do you not finish Cody Brundage? You know what I mean? Like, you go and you look at that box score. You had better position over Cody Brundage when it came to having his back and being on top of him and reversing guillotine attempts and getting on top and being inside of his guard. Like, we know that Brundage looks for a way out. How the hell do you not finish him? And if you look at it, he only threw 17 significant strikes. What? But he had 11 minutes of control time. So I think this is a fight where you could totally talk yourself into getting to Dennis Tulun. I just think the rangy kicks could keep Tulun away from him. And then when Tulun throws his big swinging punches, you're going to see Dumas clinch with them and try to expose the poor grappling of Tulun. So give me Dumas to win a decision here at 8,900. Even though I did bet on Tulun straight up, just with small money because the odds are wide. But I do think that, you know, if I had to rate somebody who's better now or who has, you know, the likelihood of improving from fight to fight, it's Cedric Dumas. He's the younger guy. So yeah, give me Dumas to win a decision here.
Yeah, Dumas is just a guy I don't have a lot of faith in. And I think I was looking more at this from a betting perspective than a DFS perspective. That plus 185 number on Dennis Tulun did kind of stick out to me in terms of that one. Let's get into our straight up fight picks. Before we get to listener questions, main event, I will go Umar Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, Nurmagomedov for me.
I go Shara Magomedov in the co-main event.
Shara Magomedov as well.
Give me underdog number 1, Chito Vera.
Chito Vera, baby.
Give me Michael Chiesa.
Tony Ferg, man. Come on, right the ship. Get in the win column.
Then I'll go, give me underdog number 2 in Loopy Godinez.
Yeah, it's really probably the hardest fight for me to pick, to be honest. That and the Joel Alvarez fight. But give me Mackenzie Dern. Slight lean.
I'll go Joel Alvarez.
Slight lean in Joel Alvarez, but again, very difficult.
I'll go Azamat.
Azamat Murzakanov.
I'll go Fernandes.
Kaue Fernandes for me.
Give me Shamil.
Shamil Gaziev for me.
I'll go Guram.
Guram Kutataladze.
Give me underdog number 3 in Hughes.
Sam Hughes, baby.
Underdog number 4, Bedoya.
Rolando Bedoya.
And I'll go Dumas, but I'll give a sprinkle there on Tulun.
Okay, I'm going to go Cedric Dumas.
Yeah. Get some questions here. We'll first start off in Discord. Value plays underneath 8K and a core 3 on DraftKings. When we talk about value plays underneath 8K, you know, I think for me, from a cash aspect, I wouldn't mind putting Vera in there, but my concern is that is a ceiling 80 points? And that may be too high of a ceiling.
Yeah.
In terms of that,
I think
other
it's too
ones.
high.
Yeah. Elvis Brener at 7,900, I don't think is a bad value play underneath 8,000. Outside of that, Sam Hughes 7,700, Orlando Bedoya 7,600 would be the kind of the values I see underneath 8K.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that, Brenner's solid. Vera is okay. Hughes I like. Bedoya I like. Tululin, I can see it. You could talk me into it. And Ferguson as just like a fun play that I'm going to have way more exposure to than I probably should.
Core 3 for me. The first two are going to, kind of limit what you can do. But to me, my top two would be Umar Nurmagomedov and Shara Magomedov. And then if I was going to go for a third, try to save some salary with a high ceiling, I'd probably go Joel Alvarez.
Okay, I'm going to apologize for them all being high-priced or high-favorited options, but I really like Shamil Gaziev, Shara Magomedov, and Azamat Murzakanov.
Next up, Tristan's asking about ranking the 9K options. So we've got Umar at 9,200. We got Shara at 9,000. Chiesa 9,500. Fernandes 9,300. Shamil 9,100. Chiesa would be at the bottom of that list. I'll just tell you that right now. He would be at the bottom of that list for me. I would put Umar number 1 because of the 5-round upside and potentially, be able to rack up some points with the grappling. Number 2, I would go. I'd probably say Shara Magomedov number 2. And then 3 and 4, I would go Fernandes and then Shamil.
For me, Shamil's 1. I really like him. I like Magomedov 2, Nurmagomedov 3, Kaue 4, Chiesa 5.
In terms of leverage plays this week, you mentioned this one a little while ago. Guram at 8,800 may be that leverage play this week.
Yeah, I think he's one of the most contrarian plays because he's kind of lost in the shuffle there. You look at his box scores, there's nothing to write home about. 56 in his debut, 37.8 in a loss, and 46.1 in a loss. I think those could just be low numbers for what could happen in this situation. So give me Guram as a contrarian play.
Takedown options. I think you have to look at both guys in the main event. If Cory Sandhagen is going to get the job done in the main event, to me, it's about him utilizing his grappling. So I would label both of those fighters as takedown candidates over there. Chiesa, I would probably put in that category as well.
Yeah, I would say Chiesa. I'm not with Sandhagen blending his grappling. I think it's something we haven't seen somebody do against Nurmagomedov to a point, but I think it could walk himself into a bad position, into a submission, and it's kind of like Bobby Green going out there against Paddy Pimblett and attempting takedown. So I would much rather him volume strike and stick to a Trevor Whitman game plan than to go into the wheelhouse of a Nurmagomedov.
Sam had his super chat questions in here a little bit earlier on the show. Sam, as always, we do appreciate that. His Road to the Mansion series, he mentioned no research at all guts based on fights and fighters. 6.5.
Over.
Yeah, that was kind of my initial thought. And some of the other, Sam's usual questions that he comes out with here, we kind of talked about the core a little bit. I think in terms of a cash core, I would want one of the guys in the main event just because of the 5-round nature. If you think Figueiredo can get, the size is not going to be a huge thing for him and get those takedowns, he's another one that I would look at as potentially a little bit of a core play.
Yeah, I'm not the big on Figgy this week, so we'll see. Well, I think this is a true bantamweight test. You know what I mean? This is a true bantamweight test. He gets through Marlon Vera, then holy moly, I just don't see it happening this week.
And when you look at some of the inside of the distance fights and decision fights, look, there's some fights that I clearly see going the distance. Vera, Figueiredo, Dern, Godinez, Dudakova, Hughes. Those will all be fights that I really like going, and fights that I think likelihood. The Menifield Azamat I look at as potentially a stoppage fight in there. Alvarez Brener, I think if a finish comes in that one, I think it's late third round type prop there in terms of that. And then I would say the co-main event, I think, is a high probability as a fight that ends inside the distance.
Yeah, I'm with you with the Brener and Alvarez fight. Like, that's my worry, is like somebody dominates and then they lose. You know what I mean? Like, somebody dominates early and then loses, and that seems to be how Brener fights are. He gets his ass kicked and then he comes back.
In terms of like a 3-fighter parlay, in terms of that one, just trying to find some odds. I mean, I don't really love putting props in parlays, but if I were, the Vera plus 300 wins by decision really sticks out to me. Really kind of allows me to get to some other places that I would want to go. If I was going to look for some odds to kind of get good parlay, maybe I go Bedoya at plus 120, Vera at plus 125. And then just take the Shara minus 245.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. I agree with all that.
Let's see here. And if there's any other questions, you can get in here. Of course, we'll be here next week as well. Show will be on Wednesday because I have to travel to Cincinnati on Friday because Pete, football season. By the way, we have a NFL preseason game tomorrow night.
I'm excited. I get way too excited for this stuff. So it's football season. My girlfriend's happy. The fall's coming. Like, psychotic. Who likes I enjoy the summer. All right. Like let's not start talking about freaking, fall anything. All right. Let's just enjoy the summer because up here in New England, it's going to be cold as hell for like 6 months. So I really try to enjoy the summer a lot.
Yeah, of course, next week we've got a rematch in that one. Of course, they're back to Apex fighting. That'll be Marcin Tybura and Sergey Spivak. Their initial matchup took place back in 2020, so we'll be here next week to talk about that matchup. It's heavyweights and kind of an odd booking in a way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised anymore, Jason. I mean, like, we're just throwing stuff together now. It's just. They don't make much sense. If it's just raise your hand if you want to fight, and whoever, well, I guess we're going to go with that matchup. So it's like sometimes there's rhyme and reason, sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. It's like, all right, this makes no sense. Like, the Figueiredo Vera fight this week should be the co-main event for 5 rounds all day long.
Sammy asked about how high should I be on Hughes exposure. I mean, I wouldn't go too crazy. I wouldn't go more than 30%. That'd be kind of my peak.
Yeah, I agree.
In terms
there's so
of
many underdogs, right? So like, yeah, there's so many underdogs. Like, you don't have to go too crazy. Just from a single entry type of approach, like, I'm probably gonna plug in my single entry lineup. And literally last week, I gave you guys my entire lineup with the video. I said exactly which fight I was going to do, which fight I wanted to target. It just worked out for me last week. So thank you guys so much for the support. Jason and I really do appreciate it, whether it's super chats, likes on the video, comments. The comments last week really helped. If you guys could do that again, just giving us your bold prediction, giving us, your confident plays or something you like about the show. We do appreciate it, and I try to engage with everybody, and same with Jason. The Discord channel is free to use and free to join. So yeah, help us get over 100 likes on each video of ours and try to get us up towards 2,000 subs. That's the next goal.
And, of course, coming up on Monday, my interview with Damon Jackson will be on the YouTube channel, so you can check out that. We'll have the show on Wednesday to break down next week's UFC Vegas card, so be on the lookout for that. We got a ton of MMA news and notes going on. Pete's favorite fighter, Nate Maness, can't believe the UFC doesn't want him. Got Mohammad Makayev. Dana White basically saying, yeah, no, we're good. See you later. All I had to do is watch that Dana White comment. I go, oh, they do not like Mohammad Makayev. Oh, they do not like him. And to me, it's not about the fighting aspect. To me, I think they just don't want to deal with him anymore. And because there's been multiple instances with him away from the cage. Other big news that came out: the judge rejected the settlement in the UFC antitrust lawsuit. We got potentially a UFC antitrust lawsuit on the verge of starting. Makes things in this MMA game crazy. The cheap tickets for UFC Noche at the Spear, $3,000. Whoo!
I'm gonna sit and watch it. Yep, I'm gonna watch it. I ain't gonna go. Nope.
3,000 just to get in the building.
It's crazy.
Bro, I saw that. I was like, oh, I figured the tickets were going to be pretty outrageous for this one. But then I was like, holy cow. Woo, that is expensive. Someone did ask about Beer Olympics. We finished 4th last week. We Flip Cup and the long chug is what ultimately did us in.
Yeah, Flip Cup. I could see you just batting the cup all around like. Oh.
It never got to me. It never. I was the finisher. It didn't get to me.
Oh dang!
It didn't get to me. It didn't get to me. But yeah, it's a fun time. You know, you just gotta go out there and enjoy life when you can, man. You know, it's
hell yeah, man.
You know, when you can go out there and whatever you like to do. You know, whatever it may be. You know, just go out there and just enjoy life, man. I mean, like, look, I'm looking forward to Friday night. I can sit on the couch. I can watch a little PFL. You know, then on Saturday, Saturday at noon, I can pop up the UFC card, and then once it's over, it's all done. Did go see Deadpool Wolverine. If you're a Marvel fan, I would recommend going out and seeing that.
That's what I've heard too. I've heard great things about it. So, yeah, I mean, you just gotta take advantage of a Saturday night off. So, I mean, we got a Saturday night off. It's gonna be daytime MMA. Do something with your lady. Do something with your man. Go whatever. Do whatever. Enjoy some family time, do something on a Saturday night because usually we are booked with fights. But again, thank you guys so much, and we will be back next week for a rematch between Marcin Tybura and Sergey Spivak. Cannot wait for that.
I sense sarcasm.
Yeah. Slightly.
Yeah, sense sarcasm over there. We'll mention the next Double Down card is going to be October 5th. I'll be on the call on that one. Worked out with my schedule. Is actually the show got they moved the date on that one, so looking forward to that. I know you and your dad got the card coming up here at Mohegan. That's we are a month away, right?
Yeah, my dad's putting on a show, MMA and kickboxing, MMA and Muay Thai show, August 24th at Mohegan Sun inside the ballroom. So if you're from the New England area, I've been helping Dad with matchmaking the event. We got like 3 or 4 of our fighters on the card, so looking forward to that. Predominantly an amateur card, prioritizing New England talent. But yeah, I had some pro fighters hit me up, but it's prioritizing New England talent. It has to make sense.
Yeah, I actually, speaking of New England MMA, I saw Peter Barrett went out and got the win against Joe Giannetti. So I think Joe's been trying to get back to the UFC. That probably put a massive halt to that one. I saw those two had some good, interesting back and forth leading up to that matchup for people who are paying attention to that one. But yeah, that went over there. And of course, so we here talk about everything going on in the world of mixed martial arts. Of course, we do appreciate everyone who tunes in. Of course, be sure to join that Discord channel. We'll have a DraftKings contest up this week as well. And of course, if you hit that thumbs up button right here on the video, it would be much appreciated. So we'll talk to you next week right here on the Fight HQ podcast.